You'll find me reporting on cases in relation to child protection in particular that are happening here in South Australia. But the same problem that we see here in SA is apparent in all jurisdictions around Australia. So many of the issues that we talk about, even though they might be SA related, are evident elsewhere. And there's a report from the ABC this week which highlights the same issues that we talk about here as happening elsewhere, particularly in this case in Queensland, where the ABC has reported that 69 children in the years 21 to 22, died who were either known to the child protection system or were in the care of the department. It's a scathing report that's come out which highlights the problems that we have right across Australia in relation to children who are either under the care of the state or alternatively are known to the state. And often it's the lack of reaction or action to notifications. It's about a system that is too overwhelmed to be able to deal with the children who are in need, or it's about a system who simply, at the end of the day, doesn't seem to care. So I'm going to just show some of this article to you, and you can evaluate it for yourself, but I can assure you it's distressing. And I just want to highlight the fact that this is a system that's under stress. It's a dysfunctional system which regretfully refuses to change. And I'm here to try and tell you that this is a system we are challenging on a daily basis and which we're working towards at the Child Protection Party. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, Tony Tonkin Show, then it's an issue which I'm passionate about, as those people that know me are well aware. And it's an issue which I will keep presenting to you until such time as we see significant changes. And I look forward to the time when we can talk about this in a more joyous way, where a system has actually chosen to address the key issues that are prohibiting us from protecting the most vulnerable people in our community, namely children, and the impact that removals have on families, and particularly, and I can't stress this enough, the impact that a death of a child has on a family, whether that child is in care or not, that the trauma that is created from the death of any child is extreme. It's personally my worst nightmare. So to highlight this, though, in the context of child protection is of particular concern because it's something that needs to be addressed. On the ABC article, this report shows that 69 children known to Queensland Child Protection System died between 2021 and 2023. A report from the Queensland Family and Child Commission shows 69 children were known to the Child Protection System died between 21 and 22, an increase of 53 children the year before. Think about that. An increase of 53 children from the year before. The deaths of 52 children in the same period have been investigated by the Child Death Review Board. The board's second annual report, tabled by Attorney General Shannon Fentiman on Thursday, shows 51% of those children were Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, reflecting the overrepresentation of First Nations children in the child protection system, a matter which is yet to be addressed. As much as we've talked about it, it still fails to be addressed. Almost 70% of the reviewed cases were under the age of 4. What does that tell us? Of the 55 children, 31 died due to external causes, including 6 children who drowned and another 6 who died by suicide. One was a child between 10 and 14 years of age. 3 children died due to fatal assault or neglect. 10 children died in similar circumstances the previous year. 4 children were under permanent guardianship orders in foster or kinship care, and 2 were in residential care, but the majority were living independently or with family and friends at the time of the death. Now, the point to be made here is that all these children were known to the department. A number of them died while in the care of the department. So, what were the circumstances around that? What caused these children's death? Why weren't they being able to be monitored? And if they were suicides in particular, what was happening in these children's lives that caused them to want to end their lives? What services were provided to assist, or what services were not provided to assist these kids? Why is it as a system they're so negligent of the needs of children? I don't understand it. You know, if we were to have if the system was to look at the system and make decisions about whether the system was a good parent, given these statistics, we'd be able to say, no, it wasn't. It was a shitty system. And that system itself needs to have the children removed and placed into another system, whatever that system might look like. The abuse of children in care, the loss of life for children that are in care or known to the system is extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And something certainly needs to be done about it. And I here in my own channel and on the Child Protection Party are certainly working towards informing you so that these changes can take place. 4 children were under the permanent guardianship orders in foster or kinship, and 2 were in residential care. As I said, the board's chair, Lou Typhoid, said the deaths were confronting. And the quote of all quotes is this one: "One death is one too many, particularly where it's preventable and where there are threats and safety issues in the child's life that are known and that should be responded to." Quote of the year. Of course they should be. The question that we're asking is why they weren't. Ms. Typhoid said the report shows systemic failings in the lives of many of the reviewed children. What we're showing is the failings related to the interaction between systems. The systems are people, though. The people running the systems. They're not some arbitrary thing that sits out there. They are people who run the system, and the lost opportunities for intervention when people who are responding to that child or to the family don't understand what other frontline workers are working on. So there's this sense that people within the system don't know what other people within that system are doing or not doing. So they don't know how to fill those gaps where children are needing and families are needing support. They automatically assume that someone else is doing the work. So people don't want to take responsibility for the work that needs to be done, often because they're either so overwhelmed with the volume of the work that's before them, or they simply don't care enough about the families and these children, when they should, because that's what they're paid to do. But they don't, and they fail these families and children over and over again, to the point where children die. And, I always get concerned that we don't become, as a community, we don't become outraged in the way that we should about this. We should be demonstrating in the streets. We should be sending emails and letters and whatever to our local MPs. We should be talking to our neighbours. And we should if we have a barbecue, we should be talking to other people about the devastating effect these deaths have. And that we should be working to encourage change in this area by becoming a louder and louder voice. But we don't. We remain mute. Think about it. When was the last time you objected to the number of deaths or just thought, vaguely, this is just what happens? Kids die. Who gives a shit? Well, those of us that care about kids do. We care about their lives. We want their lives to be better. We want their lives to be productive. We want them to have meaning. But for many kids that are part of this system, they don't, because they just don't get the support that they need. So the recommendations in the report are service accessibility and delivery, continuity of care, response to domestic and family violence, great failing of our system, safety of infants and unborn children, safety of children with a disability, another area which is completely neglected. The report found a cluster of cases in regional areas where agencies were unable to sustain meaningful service engagement with Aboriginal children. And we know from a case here in South Australia recently where the system was outsourced to another agency, and they failed to be able to provide the services that were required. In fact, they completely ignored this family to the point whereby a child died. So we've got stacks of cases. They're building up by the day, in fact. But as a community, we tend to ignore this, think that someone else will deal with it, and we don't need to advocate for the change because it doesn't affect us personally. One day it might. One day there might be your grandchild that finds themselves in a situation which leads to their death, and then you'll complain and then you'll kick up a fuss. But until it directly happens to you, so why is it that we aren't concerned about these issues and take a particular action? And I would suggest that anybody who's wherever you're watching this YouTube video, that you certainly join the Child Protection Party so that you can start to take some action, some meaningful action, and have a voice for these children. The board recommends skill shortages be addressed and a focus on increasing the number and expertise of foster and kinship carers. We've been advocating for that at Child Protection Party in particular for years. The development of a fit-for-purpose model for the continuation of care for children exhibiting high-risk behaviours was also recommended. The model will acknowledge the multiple departments the child was in contact with and should include an early intervention stream for schools and families to trigger a case management response. And I wonder what those case management responses would be and what services were available to bring in for the children, because the people that are running this system, those people themselves don't seem to be too concerned about what's happening for a lot of these kids. And until we apply enough pressure to be able to have the right people doing the right job to ensure that these children are safe, nothing will ever change. And so there are a lot of people, I think, who simply do this work because they have either the qualification, they have a social work degree or a psychology degree or a youth work degree, and they're out there doing it because it's an income. It isn't. It's a calling. It's a matter of purpose. It's about understanding the values that inform your professional decisions, and it's about practice wisdom and how one cares to behave around your own profession that makes the difference. And particularly at the end of the day, it's about really caring for these young people and ensuring that they're safe. And that is not always about removing them from their families, but it's about providing services around the families that are going to help these children. The response will address the needs of the child and their family while supporting them for the continuation of positive family functioning and behavioural guidance, simultaneously working with schools to ensure the child was engaging with their education. Children exposed to domestic violence to be treated as victims in their own right. Great idea. Let's find out what trauma is caused in relation to the violence that these children experience. Recommendations were also made about the delivery of culturally appropriate and age-appropriate responses and services for children exhibiting violent and aggressive behaviours after experiencing domestic and family violence. He also said it was important to acknowledge children as victims in their own right when looking at cases where there is violence in the home. While the household might have received a response from government, that is police, child safety, health and crisis accommodation, housing and a whole range of services, too often it was a response to the adults, the victims and the perpetrator, and children were seen as third party. And I think that's a fabulous suggestion that we need to look for services that are going to focus on the kids and the traumatisation that they've received as a result of being involved with these violent families. So making sure that the government and service systems respond to that child with an open ear and the ability to provide child-focused interventions was missing in many of the cases we saw. And he's so right, because what happens is that the children's voices, and this is another issue entirely which I could talk about for hours, children's voices are not heard either. That something needs to be done to ensure that we are interviewing and listening to children appropriately. Children, in my experience, are extremely wise, that they have things that they say which, if we listen to, we would be able to change the system that they believe has impacted them in an adverse way. That we'd be able to change the system if we just listened long enough to what kids are telling us, particularly older kids, because they'll tell you what worked for them and what didn't. They'll tell you what workers they enjoyed working with and which ones they found oppressive. So we need to be able to do, as he's suggesting, open up our ears and hear what they have to say. To promote the safety of infants and unborn children, the board recommended the extension of home visiting programs as a priority to focus on parents with complex needs. The aim of this being to support and monitor the well-being of children while addressing health and psychological needs. In a statement, Mr. Fetterman said the government will carefully consider the recommendation. They won't bloody well do anything, let's be honest. The death of a child under any circumstances is tragic and acknowledge the impact the loss of a child has on families and communities. And I see that as simply lip service. And at the end of the day, nothing will change. Not a thing. And we're going to be left with a whole range of these stories appearing one after another. And they're never going away, because we, frankly, as a community, we don't give a rat's ass. We don't. And I find that extremely sad, because unless we choose to care about what's happening for kids and we have a voice, then nothing is ever going to change. And one of the ways we can do that is, I have child protection parties, so we could join with CPP. You could set up an advocacy group, you could set up a Facebook page, you could start doing Instagram posts, you could start posting on Twitter about all of these circumstances, because it is sad. And we, as a community, seem to be more concerned about the stuff that's happening around our hip pocket, energy prices, whatever. And when you think about it, some of the stuff that politically is supposed to impact us, how relevant is that when we compare it to the life of a child? It's not that. The stuff that we argue and debate about is not that important when it comes to the death of children, or the death of anybody for that matter. And if we can change the system to ensure that children are going to survive, then we all need to band together, to work together, to make the changes that will make a difference in their lives. I hope that's helpful. I hope that some of you realise that you can make a difference, and that you can support me on this channel and my child protection channel, and help us to influence governments so that they will follow through on such recommendations, and they'll stop making hollow statements like the death of a child under any circumstances is tragic and acknowledge the impacts the loss of a child has on families and communities. Change the system. Acknowledge the wrongs that you've done. Work differently in order to engage with families so that positive change can take place. Just don't give it lip service like that. It's a waste of time and it's frustrating. Thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves, be safe, and look after your kids.